Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast, The Ins and Outs of Selling Our Business. My name is kdee, President of Osage Advisors. We're really excited to have back with us today Elisa Gelbert of Point Road Group, who has a company that works with business owners on executive and employee branding. And Elisa, thanks for coming back. I know you have a lot on your plate these days.
Thanks for having me again, Keith. Great to see you.
So, interesting niche you're in. And maybe we could start today with just kind of how did you get into this business? Love to learn a bit more of that.
Well, completely accidentally.
Like most of us, right? So
yeah, right. So my background's marketing and branding, and was in a variety of industries, sports marketing, technology consulting, biomedical research. And in every role I had, people would always come to me for advice and guidance on communications, if they were hiring, on business development and job search. And it was always just a fun part of what I did. It was never an official part of my job. And then at some point, people I didn't know started coming to me for advice. And, I said, well, might as well hang up a shingle here. And so I did that, and all of a sudden business started to grow. So when I started the firm, it was just focused on executive branding. So helping the individual who was looking for advice and guidance on business development, and it was always at the senior level, on job search, looking for a board seat, or more visibility in what they were doing as a leader. And it was a very practical approach and strategic at the same time, and it worked really well. And so business started to grow. And then, of course, then I, had to make the decision and started the business full time. And then out of that grew our corporate work, because what happened was the business leaders would say to us, hey, this was really helpful for me. Could you come help my team? And for me, finally it was like light bulb moment. Individual revenue, corporate revenue. What makes more sense here? So we do both, actually. So then we shifted our focus, so it's primarily employee branding, but we still do executive branding too. So we're B2B and B2C, and so the employee branding piece is helping companies accelerate their growth by focusing on the people part of the business, as we've been talking about.
Yeah. So how we knew again. When maybe you can provide an example, why someone would come to you. I mean, you have many clients. You have a team of several consultants, advisors on your team. Maybe you just share with us, why they came to you and how you helped them with their issues and problems.
Sure. So I think, I'll think of some examples that are probably most relevant for your audience, which are people thinking about selling their business. So there was an accounting firm, and the founder, they were pretty successful. The founder knew he wanted to sell in a few years, but he first wanted to grow a little bit faster. They did really great work. They had incredibly high client satisfaction, but they felt like they were missing the mark and not generating enough leads. And so they did accounting. They also did they were also fractional CFOs. And so he said to me, the founder said to me, people are really weak on LinkedIn. Now that's what started the conversation. Could you help us with that? And so then we said, okay, sure. But then we said, first, let's look at, the larger landscape here. And people were weak on LinkedIn, and so that was low visibility with prospects. It hurt their credibility. But also we said, well, let's look at the communication skills. Let's look at everything else here. And I said to the business owner, when was the last time you looked at how you communicate about the business? You sound like a plain vanilla accounting firm, and you're amazing. Your people are amazing. There's energy. There's a lot of differences here. So what we did first was we updated their company description, so it was an accurate reflection of all the different ways that they serve their clients, because what they had before was very limited. It included a little bit about their culture and their approach and how they help their clients solve problems and how they did it a little bit uniquely. Then we rolled that out. So we started with that, and then they use that everywhere on their website, on their sales and marketing materials. And then we rolled that out. We said, well, let's make sure we include that on LinkedIn, on the company's LinkedIn page. we also noticed that the company had no LinkedIn strategy in terms of how they posted and engaged. They just
Right.
kind of were throwing things up there. So we actually helped them develop a strategy, because when we get to the next stage, which is the people part, you want to make that easy for them and to help your people engage. So we developed a LinkedIn strategy for them. And then we focused on people. First, we looked at the business owner and his leadership team. It was a small leadership team, 4 people. We made sure they all looked and sounded great. So we did their corporate bios, we did their LinkedIn profiles. So it showed their value and made them sound so much more engaging and then they showed that they are as engaging as they are, not the way they had appeared. Because remember, we're thinking also in the future, we're thinking selling, we want to make, selling the business, we want to make sure people are coming across well for the future, for the, a potential acquirer, but also right now for, potential customers, as well as attracting, because they were growing, you want to attract talent too. So once we got the leadership team together, then we did training, LinkedIn training for everybody in the company on how to have a better profile, how to be a better brand ambassador, but in a way that also shows that it's beneficial for them and their careers and to help them. And so we did LinkedIn training. Then we did communications training. So how to communicate better, and in every sense. So verbally, when they're speaking, when they're, a lot of people, even though they were primarily in office, everybody's still doing business on
Right.
virtually out here on our screens. So how to do that better, and how to communicate better and be more engaging and present to customers, to prospects. And I remember one of our early meetings. One of the leaders, while we were engaging, his head's turned half the time, and I'm thinking, if you're doing that, here, then that's a habit of yours. That's not a good habit, right? Because what message does that send? But
Right. Right. You're not paying attention, right? You're
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
distracted. Right.
It's all the little things. So we looked at all those little things from a communications perspective, just to make sure. Half of it is awareness. Sometimes people have habits that they don't realize that they have, and then the way others perceive those. So we shine a light on that and made sure everybody kind of had, was upping their game a little bit in terms of how they were presenting and communicating. And then the last piece that we did, and this was something we started to do a couple of years ago that we found was really helpful, is we embedded what we did in a more brief way in new employee onboarding. Because if you have a team, we help them, we get them, looking and sounding great and better. What happens to anybody else, especially if you were on a growth, you have aggressive growth strategy and you're bringing people on? What about them? They don't then get the benefit of everything. So we embedded what we did in new employee onboarding. So
Well,
they
that's
would
a,
get, yeah, so it wasn't as long, but it was still, there was a component there. So they would have that advantage.
yeah. So you're helping create a value proposition for the business when they're ready to sell. That is very important to the buyer pool at every level, and you want to have a clear, consistent message. You want people buying into your brand, and the value you're creating with your people is going to be well received by the buyers. Because I can, in today's world, when they think of due diligence, when they're selling a company, they think of financial due diligence, they think of operational due diligence, checking out my insurance policies, environmental. What they don't think about, they don't think about the social presence of the company, but the buyer does. And the buyers literally have consultants that they bring in that talk about, that scrape social media platforms, not
Yeah.
just LinkedIn. They look at TikTok, they looked at Instagram, they looked at Facebook, and they are looking for stuff and see if there's any negativity or out there that could be an impediment or affect them as a ticking time bomb when they take the business over, right? And sometimes there are. Right? Unfortunately, it just is. People have their personal social media presence, and I'll give you an example. We had a client we sold. It went through, but it got tenuous. Is that his number 2 person, who was going to kind of take over when he retired, posted something that was let's say less than desirable on Instagram, right? That got the buyer saying, is this guy responsible? Can I trust him? all
When
that
you
type of
think about,
stuff.
yes, risk management, right? It's,
Right.
human capital risk is a big part of risk management. It's
Yes.
not just operational and financial.
Yeah. And the buyers are looking back at that piece. So you're going in there and you're not just looking at the ownership group, you're looking at senior, then you get into employees. And I love the idea of the onboarding piece because a lot of people, when they onboard, they get a packet in the mail and, for new, but they fill it out and then all of a sudden they show up and it's like, then they're going to change their own LinkedIn profile because, hey, I just got a new job. I mean, you see it every day, right? I'm happy
Yeah.
to start a new job on LinkedIn, but what does that mean, right? How does that affect, where does that come into, how does that messaging be consistent with what you're trying to put out there? So, you know, it's fascinating to me that, the employee branding piece, it's so critical to the future and getting the right deal done when you're selling, but it's
No one thinks about
undervalued,
it.
right? No one thinks about it. It's
No one
undervalued.
thinks about
So,
it.
and in saying with that, if when you go into a business, and we may have touched a little bit about this in the last episode. You gave us an example of the accounting firm. I said, what do you run into resistance at all? I mean,
No, because I think, well, one of the very important things is we don't, because we make sure, and we guide our clients on this, that they have to communicate to everybody why we're doing it. Why are we doing this? Why are we working with these? Why are we working with Point Road Group? To help the business and to help the people. So they know that, hey, my company's investing in me, not just in the business, but they're investing in me too. They care about me. It's sort of professional development. I shouldn't say sort of it, you can call it that, if you will, because it's helping me as in, when you have someone who's an executive coach, who's and a strategic communications advisor who's helping me be a better communicator, who's helping me be better on social media. If I in any way touch business development and bringing in clients, right? That's all going to help me. So it's always a positive message. Everybody's excited, it gets excited about it because they know it's helpful. And we have a very interactive, engaging, hands-on approach. We are so not about you're going to listen to someone talk for an hour about something, and maybe you get to ask a couple questions and that's it. It's a very hands-on, interactive approach. And I think it gets people really interested. We want them, we want them to be more successful. We want the business and the people to be more successful.
So how do you, again, we talked, it's a very highly valuable niche that you play in. How do you typically get referred in? Because, business owners, including myself, when it's not like top of mind, so to speak,
Right.
although it should be, right? I'm learning a lot myself today, just listening to you and our prior conversation before, getting on the podcast. How do you get referred in? Where like, how does that work for you? Because, someone's thinking about this and they say, hey, you need to talk to Point Road Group about this. How does that work for you?
It's very much, it's very much when you think about if you're selling your business and saying we're not quite where we need to be, right? Or I want to make sure we maximize our value. What are things that we should do? Looking at your people. And that's what we say that to people all the time. When was the last time you took a look at how your people look at, step back, how your people are coming across in a meeting or online. And so how do people come to us? It's almost always through referrals,
Right.
very frequently, whether it's a client or just someone in our world, because it's about, do you want to grow faster? It doesn't always have to be about selling the business. Obviously, in this case, we're talking about people selling the business, and we do work a lot in that space. But it's also companies that are at the stage where they want to grow more, and they're not sure why. They have good people, they've got good processes, but we're just not growing at the rate in which we'd like to be growing. Another situation is they're looking to attract investors. So they're not necessarily
Right.
looking to sell, but they want to attract investors. So how do but it's the same concept when you're selling the business. It's all about people. People are investing. Yes, they're looking, of course, at the business itself first, but then the next piece is they're investing in people. They're investing in leadership. So that's a really important time.
Yeah, so for our audience, if you were to, name like the top couple things that why employee branding is so important to you, what would you say to them?
It's in terms of, I mean, it's important because it's impacting your business every day without you realizing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You are losing opportunities because you likely have not paid attention to the real influence that some of your people have on your business, right? I mean, I can think of so many examples, even just in my everyday life, where I hear someone missing an opportunity. I'm a member of, so example, I mean, I'm a member of Vistage, and there was someone in my Vistage group who would always describe his business in one way. And he wouldn't talk about one of the verticals that he was in. He just, and there was somebody hosting the Vistage meeting, and it was a banker, and he introduced himself, and then I always said to him, "You should say, that other vertical," and then he said it, and the banker said, "Oh, I work with that vertical." It was hospitality. "I work with hospitality clients all the time. We should talk." Now,
Mm-hmm.
that's a very simple example, but had he not said that, there wouldn't have been that connection, right? And now they go off and talk about how they can refer business, and they've referred business to each other. Simple. I know that's boiling it down to something very simple, but really it can be something as simple as that.
Well, yeah, the light bulb goes off, right?
Right.
And you say, okay, you know what? Sometimes you work in these silos. Everybody's busy, and you kind of like in your own little silo, and you're working away, and in the back of your mind, you're like, I need to address this, but all of a sudden you need to get distracted on something else, and then it just gets
Right.
punted, right, or pushed
Exactly.
on.
And it comes back to something I had mentioned, I think in our last episode, about leaders model behavior. So think about that example.
Right.
If he's not doing it, well, maybe the people on his team aren't doing it. And then think of that lost business there. Well, what if it's another vertical? Or maybe it's one of the services they provide. And then it adds up. Who doesn't want more business, right? At the end of the day, when you are a growing company, or when you're looking to increase the value of your business.
Right. And then value proposition is everything. And when you're selling, I always use the skepticism meter, right? So if the buyer is skeptical about certain aspects, including your management team, right, or transition, the valuation proposition is going to go down.
Exactly.
If they buy into it and are confident and feel good about it, then the valuation goes up, or someplace in between, right? So without that, I mean, the last thing you want to have happen is dissension behind the curtain, right? Flowing in to the open market, so to speak, right? That the people become aware of situations, right? And it's not just, by the way, we're talking about the seller here, but it's also from our clients, reading the room with the buyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've had a couple situations where we got uncomfortable with the buyer, not the price, but with a sense like, are these guys on the same page?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Could it be two firms partnering together to buy one of our clients, or they're bringing in an executive team to partner with the private equity firm to buy our client, and all of a sudden you're looking at them like, I sense there's a lack of continuity or consistency in their approach. And do I really want to sell to these guys or this firm, right? I mean, that can happen, and it has happened. And what we immediately do is, and we call them out. So, we're not getting a good vibe from you guys. Are you guys together or not on this deal? Right. If you are, you need to regain the confidence in our client. And if our client doesn't feel confident, then our reaction is don't do the deal. So
I think you touched on something really important, Keith. Confidence, trust, right? It's that credibility, the confidence, the trust. That's what people communicate. And they could have all the deal could be structured amazingly. The company that they're buying could be great. But if there's no trust, and confidence and trust, then all that stuff doesn't matter at the end of the day.
It doesn't. There's gonna be no deal, right? Just
Right.
not gonna happen. This has been terrific. Branding, employee level branding, people that a lot of owners don't think about in their daily life, so to speak. I think you've kind of brought it up to the forefront, and Elisa, I really appreciate your efforts here and your time. I know you got a lot going on, and maybe we can have you back down again down the road. So,
Oh, love it. I would say,
you know-
and the most important thing for everybody is just awareness, right? Start thinking about it. Take a look inside your team and how they're coming across. That's the best place to start.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Elisa Gelbert of Point Road Group, founder, CEO. It's been a great time with you today, and we'll have you back down sometime in the future.
Great. Thanks, Keith. Great to see
Thank you
you.
for being with us, and thank you for being with us. My name is Keith D, President of Osage Advisors. If you enjoy our podcast, The Ins and Outs of Selling a Business, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. To learn more about Osage, you can visit our website at osageadvisors.com. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at kdee@osageadvisors.com or pick up the phone and give me a call at 860-767-3273, extension 1001. Thanks again for being with us today, and have a great day.